Wrestling to the Max NXT Review.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Wrestling to the Max. This is your NXT review for May. Wait, what is it, Paul? Is it May or June?
Would have been May 31st, I believe.
May 31st, okay. Because, see, I am already backwards on my dates. Folks, this is why. My daughter's birthday is coming up, and I was a little thrown off by the dates here. I thought it was a different day on this actual day we're doing this podcast. But you're right, Paul. This is May 31st edition, and I am excited about talking about this NXT. This also is an NXT that's kind of important because it follows up what we got in NXT Chicago. Mm-hmm. So there you go with that. If you want to find all of our other great content, I just want to put a bug in everybody's ear. Make sure you go check out W2Mnet.com. Make sure you go subscribe at Wrestling to the Max. Go rate, review, and of course, do all that stuff when it comes to the, reviews, because it really helps us out. We appreciate everyone who does that. And if you love everything at W2Mnet.com, that must mean that you know about the W2M Network. So the W2M Network is very important. If you do like all our content, go subscribe, rate, and review over there as well. But yeah, Paul, we got a lot of interesting stuff to get into with this NXT, so let's go ahead and get this thing started.
Yeah, let's just jump right in, man, because they open up with Tomasso Ciampa coming out on crutches, and he gets a chance to explain his actions from TakeOver. And basically, he explains what happened. He had an injury at a house show on NXT the Thursday before TakeOver Chicago, and he was intent on doing the match, but everybody else was doubting him. The internet, the people here in the audience, everybody, everywhere, and he believes even Johnny Gargano was doubting him, and everybody was talking about replacing him. And then he goes on to explain that him and Johnny had really just been fighting to have their moment in the sun, and they were planning on Chicago being that time, but it just didn't turn out that way. And so Gargano, not wanting anybody to forget about him and being angry that everybody thought he was going to be replaced, attacked Johnny and made Chicago his moment. Gary, I thought this was an insanely strong promo. They still haven't said exactly what extent his injury is, although we do know he tore his ACL. And I think commentary says he's going to have surgery, so that makes me think it's a full tear and not a partial one. But we won't really know until we hear something down the grapevine, essentially. But Ciampa leaves a strong impression here, if you ask me.
Yeah, he does. And, the injury itself, it's a shame to see this is happening for this guy, because we've talked about this before. This guy was in store for a big push. We were expecting lots of great things, especially with this feud between him and Gargano. I think that was going to be something special. And I really feel like it was going to lead up to SummerSlam weekend, or maybe even, further down the line if they wanted to push this until, maybe even, closer to next year's WrestleMania. But I think that would have been a big, super awesome situation for Brooklyn. But, what it is what it is, right? I mean, he's now injured. He's going to be on the sidelines for quite a while now, especially if you do follow that whole thought process that he is going to have surgery. That usually means 9 months to a year he's going to be out of action, and that's pretty hard dateline there, because it's not something that's just easy to come back from. So best wishes for him, and I hope that he gets better quicker than later. This was a great promo. And at first, Paul, I really didn't know how to respond and think about it at the beginning, because I think at times I felt like he was just kind of coming off a little slow. Then at times it's like, oh man, that makes sense what he's saying. Then he kind of goes back to what he started out talking about at the beginning of the promo. He was kind of here, there, and everywhere in this promo. But you know what? What's weird, Paul, is as I'm sitting here judging it as it's going, and I'm kind of ready to not like it in a way. It's strange because I love Ciampa. I'm a big Ciampa fan. But I don't know if it's something he learned in promo class, or it's something that he just knew what to do and how to kind of build this promo and put it together as a puzzle. He really did a great job of the lulls weren't always lulls. He always hit some big marks, some valleys, and of course the mountains in this promo. So it was never just a straight low run at times. It had a lot of high moments along with it. So I think the roller coaster of this promo worked out well for everybody, and it made sense. For his thought process, it wasn't just all of a sudden, I hate Gargano. I looked in the mirror one day and just said I hate him. Instead of that, he really come out here and he came and told everyone, look, I realized in that match, especially when we were sitting there and I saw the crowd react, and I knew this guy probably would just move on without me. I know I'm injured. Mm-hmm. I'm not in a good situation. I'm going to be on the sidelines. This guy is going to run with his career and use somebody else, and I'm just going to be on the sidelines for the rest of this, and he'll just move on without me. So I like all that. I think it makes sense completely what he's doing here, and I don't know if Gargano is going to have a chance to respond next week or when they're going to do that, but I think this is some good closure for him, especially if he's going to be away from TV for quite a while.
That was my favorite thing about this promo, is that he very expertly takes you through his entire line of thought all the way up to the attack and where he's at afterwards. And he's out to prove when he comes back that he pretty much is professional wrestling. He skips all the, I'm going to come back better than ever. He's just going to come back and prove to you why he's the best, which I think is a great way to leave it. And commentary mentions that nobody has heard from Gargano at all since the attack, which I thought was a really nice touch too. So we have no idea when we're going to see Gargano again or Ciampa, but they leave you on a high note, and they can touch back on this if they ever decide to do that again down the line. So I think they leave this pretty well open.
I think you're right on that. And the thing is, it's not just about Ciampa. Some of this is about Gargano and what his future is going to be. Now that DIY is not going to be something that they can do anymore, especially with the injury, even if this was not a feud between the two, they would not be DIY. This would just be Gargano on a singles run anyway, unless they did tag him up with somebody else. So this gives them the opportunity, I don't know, maybe in a month, maybe two, whenever they want to do it. Bring him back. You don't have to build up and keep this whole thing between him and Ciampa. You can put some space in between them and make it about something else until they do meet again down the line. So that's the nice thing. You can kind of have Gargano a little bit fresher in a new direction without bringing up a lot of these questions. I mean, sure, people like us, Paul, we're probably going to still ask those questions. We're going to remember, but you're going to have some fans that are just like, okay, it's whatever. I'm just excited to see him. So that's the good thing. Put that space in between this whole situation, and I think it'll go really smoothly.
Yeah, I mean, they don't really have a lot of choice other than to let it breathe, and I'm sure we'll hear, whenever Gargano does come back, we'll get his side of the story and how he feels about it all, and what he plans to do afterwards, seeing as Ciampa is more than likely not going to be in the picture for a while. And I would have to think he's going to get thrown into that top echelon of guys competing for the NXT Championship, but if they have somebody they want to pair him up with, that's either already on the roster or is in the Performance Center, and they want Gargano to try to find another person to try to win the tag team titles with, I would be okay with that. And then you could have Ciampa, whenever he does return, now he's got more than one feud waiting for him, because now he's not only got Gargano he's pissed at, but now he's got the replacement he can be pissed at too. So I think that would be a nice way to go too.
No, you're totally right on that. And I would love to see maybe Ciampa come back and injure the guy that replaced him. Mm-hmm. And then go from there and say, guess what, Gargano, you're next. Right. So I think it's a good thing in a situation that'll only lead to more positive things down the line. It's just the fact that we have to wait so long to see that. Mm-hmm. Off the top of your head, anybody that you can place with Gargano at this moment, anybody that you could kind of fantasy book in with him?
Like all the big names in NXT are at the top of the card already. They're competing for that NXT title, and I don't know if they want to make a super team that way, or if they want to turn this into a whole thing sort of like they did with American Alpha, where you had Jordan looking for a partner for forever until he found Gable. So I think I kind of like the second one, just so they can go through some names until he finds somebody that he likes. But there's nobody I can really think of off the top of my head that immediately leaps out at me as somebody who would be somebody to replace Ciampa, essentially.
Yeah, that's true. And Wesley Blake is a heel, so he wouldn't fit in with that situation for Gargano. But still, those two guys could be a good pair if that was not the case. So you're right. Off the top of my head, I'm also kind of drawing a blank because a lot of this undercard is honestly rebuilt, and they're trying to get it back to where it once was to an extent. So we'll see. I mean, I think Gargano's got a healthy future ahead of him, but I mean, I would just want to kind of fantasy book for a second and think about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go ahead and move on, though, because we've talked about that a lot. So Danny Burch gets a video package. He's going to be challenging Pete Dunne tonight. But before we get to that, Bobby Roode's glorious celebration isn't even in the NXT arena. He's going somewhere else, and it's not going to happen at Full Sail because it's this big exclusive event, and he'll be back at Full Sail next week to talk about who his next challenger is going to be. I kind of like this. Like, we were expecting something on the show, and they kind of did a little bit of a bait and switch, which fits Roode perfectly.
Yeah, okay, we were all expecting some kind of big shebang and, all this stuff to take place. Of course, in fact, think Hideo Itami will get involved, and all that doesn't happen. So you're just kind of like, okay, whatever. But sometimes it's nice not to do those big celebrations. Sometimes it's kind of fun to keep you guessing on what he did, So I like it. I don't think it's a bad idea.
I completely agree with you. And then let's talk about this match. Pete Dunne takes on Danny Burch. It seems like they're wanting to do something here because Burch gets in a whole bunch against the new champion. Of course, Pete Dunne does still win. Big X-Plex in the middle of the match, and he kind of gets... They go back and forth from there, and then Burch misses a knee strike. Dunne hits a German into the turnbuckles, which is absolutely disgusting, and then flattens him with the bitter end to win. And then he gets a nice little post-match promo where he talks about how he's had to live in a world where a boy was holding a championship that he thought belonged to him. But now that it's his, they can officially say that the UK era started when Pete Dunne won the championship. And it was cool to see how insanely over he was here in Full Sail.
Oh, yeah. It's great. And this guy is still young in his career with WWE, and so I'm really happy to see that the fans are already behind him. But you got to give it a fact. It is NXT. That's a situation where, if you're halfway popular, they're going to love you. So that's the great thing. You kind of have to take that with a grain of salt. But nonetheless, Pete Dunne's great. Even if he hit the main roster today, I think he would get over pretty well. I love the promo at the end here. I think that, it just shows who he is. He seems to be pretty darn comfortable on the mic. So I think this guy is already ahead when it comes to that, when it comes to some of these other guys on the UK roster. Danny Burch did a good job as well in this match. I think both of them put on a fine little bout here. It was important to, have bouts like that. And, I think Danny Burch came out looking pretty darn strong, and they need that. They need that competition, and you can't just have Pete Dunne come and destroy one of these guys that should be a competitor, should be somebody that we could possibly think the next guy to be Pete Dunne. So I enjoyed it for what it was, and, still, can't be more impressed with Pete Dunne than I already am.
That's true. The Velveteen Dream gets a promo, but he refuses to engage in the interview because he says the area isn't right. Kayla isn't in the right mindset to interview him, and so he'll do it next time when she is maybe more prepared and the area is more to his liking. And then we get an Authors of Pain video package, and then that leads us into Andrade Cien Almas taking on Cesar Bononi, who is from Brazil. He's this big, tall guy. We've seen him a few times on NXT before, and he's never really jumped out at you as somebody who is overly talented, but he does have a nice look about him. This goes 3 minutes, and Bononi gets the surprise inside cradle to win, to kind of keep this storyline going that Almas likes partying too much and isn't taking wrestling so seriously, and initially, he seems to be having a problem dealing with the loss, but then he sort of just calms down and walks out all happy and go lucky as you like.
All right. Well, before I jump into that match, I want to talk about the Velveteen Dream. I still want to call him Patrick Clark. I can't help it, Paul. I just Patrick Clark just sticks in my head. But anyway, yes, he is a Velveteen Dream. Yeah, it really is. Especially since I watch Breaking Ground, right? Once you watch that show and you get kind of invested, you kind of stick with their name. I don't know what to say about him. I still kind of feel like, and excuse me, and I don't want to put this guy down, but I think it's just the way he presents himself, and maybe I can kind of see a little bit into him, but it's almost like a kid pretending like he's a character. And I don't mean to be mean or ugly towards the guy, because I'm sure he's trying his hardest, but it's really hard for me, Paul. I can't believe it. I don't know what's missing here, but when he gives these promos, I think, okay, that's okay, but I'm still not buying it, you know?
I'm still withholding judgment, because I don't think we've gotten a full picture of what exactly he's supposed to be yet. Like, we know in the ring he's sort of this great athlete, and the talent as far as, you know, wrestling skill goes is kind of there. And then in this promo, like, it's not like he's trying to come across as something with his character, like a better than you sort of deal, but it's still not overly clear what he should be to me yet. And I don't want to make a snap judgment on what I've seen, because I feel like we haven't gotten a complete picture yet.
Yeah, and that's fair. You're being a lot more fair than I am, and I give you credit for it. I just think that this guy needs to go in a completely different direction. I understand the whole effeminate thing. He's a skinny, small little guy. It works. Yet I don't think he can pull it off. Now, if he was a mean, little, fancy, little angry guy, I'll buy that. Make him really mean. Make him angry. Make him feisty. That fire that could come from him and just his arrogance and all that, I think works great. But having him just be kind of dainty and, you know, the Velveteen Dream, it's just hokey. And I don't think he can sell it very well. At least this point. Maybe later on down the line he will. And you know, like I said, better on you, Paul, for getting credit. Right now it's not working for me completely, but let's hope he does better. Yeah, and almost, you know, in this match with what was his name? Baloney Teen?
Cesar Bononi.
Benoni. Okay, thank you. I just couldn't even remember what it was. Benoni did fine in this match, being a guy that I haven't seen a lot of. I don't think he did bad, but he's not great, you know? He's just a kind of an average Joe. It's more about the fact that Almas loses and he really, you know, feels like it was a fluke, and that's what this is about. This is about making Almas angry, and I like that. I like the fact that he's throwing a fit. He's upset that he lost a match that he knows he should have won. We know he should have won that match, but his own arrogance, himself, you know, playing around, goofing off, and just thinking that he would win no matter what, caused him to match. And I like that. That tells a story. That's something that we need. Almas, how many times have we said, Paul, Almas needs to get more of a character. We need more of him to do things to make us really get invested in what he's doing, besides just being a pretty good wrestler. I think that that's working for me. I like what Almas is doing now. I hope they continue this. I really, really do. I want to see more of this. I want to see him throwing fits. I want to see him to go, you know, a little bit insane. And that's fun, and it makes more sense to me. So I'm happy with what they did here.
Yeah, what I would really like to see is maybe them expand on this a little bit more. Like, give me some pre-taped stuff of him partying somewhere in Miami. Or Orlando, or, you know, wherever they want to go in Florida, and sort of expand on that so we can see the partying stuff and what he's doing and why it's affecting him in the ring. And then as you're drawing this out and he keeps getting more upset, you know, maybe that's when he snaps and you get a new Almas to go with the heel shtick he's doing right now to push him to that next level. But I'm with you on this. I like this. It's a story for him to follow and to turn him into something more, and that's really, really, like you said, super necessary for this guy who hasn't really been given a whole lot in his time on NXT television so far.
You're right. And, you know, on the other side of the fence, when it comes to Benoni, that's really cool for him to get a win like this against a credible guy on the roster. And once we see him down the line here, I think, you know, like you said, his look is great. I think if, you know, he can develop too, down the line, we'll be talking about this guy on a more regular basis. So there you go.
Absolutely, absolutely. After that, we get a video package with Peyton Royce and Billy Kay, who are in the Performance Center. sort of just being themselves as they talk about, moving stuff around to fit their needs and whatever. And then Ember Moon shows up. They start mocking her, and then a trainer shows up and gets her to sign some papers, which commentary says is medical release forms. So Ember Moon is officially back in action. Don't know when we will see her on NXT TV, but in 2 weeks' time, Asuka's going to defend her championship against Ruby Riott and Nikki Cross once again, except this time it's going to be an elimination match. So that should be something pretty cool. And then we get footage of Hideo Itami having his nice little freak out after he lost to Bobby Roode at TakeOver, and how Ohno tried to calm him down, and Itami pretty much told him to go screw himself. And then they get some more footage after that of earlier today with Ohno and Itami seemingly making up and shaking hands in the parking lot. So things seem to be all hunky-dory there. But next week, Hideo Itami's going to take on Oney Lorcan. So I have a feeling this isn't entirely over, Gary.
Yeah, and it's not. And I think a lot of us kind of figured it will go on and continue on. And, I like the fact that they showed this backstage footage of Hideo Itami, only because of the fact that we don't need just to see him come out and just be a great competitor and feel like, that's all he's about. We need to know that this matters to him and that he's, going to be in that gray area. I keep talking about this week in, week out. This guy is not completely a face. It wouldn't take much to turn Hideo Itami into a big heel if they just really wanted to, because he is one of the biggest gray area guys that I can find on NXT, at least in my personal opinion, because the way he's presented himself, he's got that chip on his shoulder, which he should, because every time he gets close to winning the NXT championship or being, on top of this NXT roster, injuries happen, something happens to keep him away from being that guy. So this is what's great. They're showing that he's got that chip on his shoulder, and he's going to try to prove everybody wrong by, defeating Bobby Roode. And this is good. So I was happy with that. I think they did a good job with all that. About the women's division, I think that, these videos that they do with Billie Kay and Peyton Royce, I think those are great for the fact that I think that they give you something that's really special, and that means I feel as if you were a part of the group, right? And that's all these, we've talked about this plenty of times. You're inside the Performance Center. You feel like you're getting, you're a fly on the wall. You get to see everything. So I appreciate that. And, of course, they sprinkle in this whole thing with Ember Moon and is showing her, hey, she's going to be back soon. So all that together is really great. And, they also talked about that match. It'll be coming up, the elimination match with Asuka. I think that's good, too. So I think overall, without, making it boring or anything like that, they did a good job of pacing themselves and really setting the picture for you for a lot of these different things, and I was very happy with that.
Yeah, I agree. Pretty simple and straightforward with the women's division right now, as they try to keep enough people around so that way it won't feel like a wasteland whenever Asuka gets called up. So the only thing left we have to talk about is this main event. Roderick Strong teams up with Kassius Ohno to take on Eric Young and Alexander Wolf of Sanity. Of course, they have Killian Dane at ringside. This, however, is all about making Roderick Strong look like the guy who's got these guys' numbers. They battle back and forth. Ohno gets his butt handed to him for most of the match. He makes the tag to Strong. Near the end of the match, when the numbers game starts getting involved, No Way Jose returns and starts attacking Killian Dane. And then this allows an opening for Roderick Strong to jump in the ring and finish Young off with the end of Heartache to get his team the victory, and the faces celebrate. I thought this was a nice piece of business. The match is good. It doesn't overstay its welcome. And Strong continues to look like a very strong, no pun intended, force here in NXT.
Yeah, and that's fine. That's what you need, especially if you are building Roderick Strong to be one of the bigger stars of NXT, which he kind of is becoming that. Mm-hmm. Problem here with this whole situation, though, and in this picture, Paul, for me, is the fact that they're doing it on the heads of Sanity.
Right.
And that's not positive for me, because if you ever want me to believe that Sanity is an imposing force and they're not to be messed with, you're not doing a good job of it. It seems like to me they talk to the writers of WWE on the main roster and says, hey, how terribly did you treat the Wyatt family? We want to do that too. Let's do that to Sanity. And it's too early for that. I think that they really need to build up Sanity. I know you don't want Roderick Strong to lose if you're wanting, him to be one of the bigger stars. Well, guess what? You got a guy over there in Kassius Ohno that you're already making look kind of like a chump at times because his butt was getting kicked the entire time. Just have him take the pinfall. You don't make Roderick Strong take the pinfall, and then all this other stuff can take place. I just think that they're going in the wrong direction with Sanity. They were doing so well, and now all of a sudden their kryptonite is Roderick Strong. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if I feel good about this, but we'll see. Maybe they'll prove me wrong. I'm not happy about the situation. I know this is leading up to a 6-man tag, but we'll see.
It might be leading up to another 6-man tag. And I'm kind of with you on this because I love the Sanity Act as much as you do. I think it's really fun. But right now, Strong is sort of looking to be the guy positioned to be the next one challenging for the NXT Championship. And you have Ohno and Itami looking to be like they're on a collision course too, which could be a really big matchup for Brooklyn or something else down the line. And I don't think they have the same plans in mind for Sanity that I thought they did earlier in the year. Because for a while, it really looked like they were positioning them to overrun NXT entirely. And that has sort of been turned down a whole bunch because I think Bobby Roode has been insanely successful as the champion, and they don't want to change that. And the tag team division is already dominated by a pair of heels in the Authors of Pain. So Sanity is sort of on the outside looking in, waiting for their time, I guess, to jump in whenever that happens to be. And it might not even be this year anymore. It might have to be longer because I don't know how long the Authors of Pain are going to be around, or Bobby Roode, or a lot of these guys who they've just brought in. And with the news coming in that, you're going to have more big faces jumping in, like their number just keeps falling further back in the line.
Yeah, and that's a big deal. And the only thing I will say, too, is, we don't know all the stuff behind the stages and what they want to do with certain guys. And, Vince may be looking, or maybe even Triple H is telling Vince, hey, Killian Dane, he's a guy that I think you may want on the main roster. He may not be sticking around with Sanity.
Right.
Guys like that, we just, don't even think about that maybe they are eyeing for the main roster before some of this other stuff transpires, could affect the booking in ways that, they're planning on doing things in the future for NXT. So maybe that's why. But me and you both are really strong for Sanity. We want them to do well. We want them to succeed. I mean, I was really looking for them to have the Conquest for Gold? I forget what the Hardys used to call it. Mm-hmm. But, I was really hoping that they would hold all the gold in NXT, but that doesn't look like it will transpire. If that's not going to happen, at least give these guys an honest chance to look as dominant as they can. So that's just me. I'm hoping for the best for those guys.
Yeah, I think it'll happen at some point. Like I said, with so much happening everywhere else, I think they're just sort of falling back in the line a little bit. But that's going to cover it for NXT this week. This is a really great episode. If you haven't watched it, this is one I would recommend you go watch. There's stuff happening everywhere, and there's lots of good wrestling. So all added benefits there.
Yeah, for sure, and definitely, and we enjoy talking NXT every week, and we'll do that again next week. Don't forget to go check us out on Wrestling to the Max on wherever you get your podcast listening. Of course, maybe go to iTunes, or I think they call it Apple Podcasts now, and also any other place. Go just subscribe, rate, and review for us. WTMnet.com. Also, the W2M Network is also a great place to go subscribe and rate and review as well. So, thank you guys for joining us. We will catch you guys down the road.
Have a good one, guys.
The following podcast is a W2M Network original production. Visit W2Mnet.com for all of our other great podcasts, plus news, reviews, articles, and opinions from the worlds of wrestling, video games, football, and entertainment.